Painting isn't just for professional artists. It's for anyone who needs a break from their thoughts, a little peace in the chaos, or a splash of color in a gray day. So sit down and take 5 minutes. This quick watercolor painting moment is for you. All right, let's go ahead and pull out our painting supplies and get started. Here I've got some watercolor paints, a paper towel, some clean water, watercolor paper, any size you like. With this flower technique I'm going to show you, you can paint as many or as few as you like on whatever size of page, from card size to something you can frame and hang. And then lastly, we of course need some brushes. I'll be using my personally designed Craftamo brushes today. We only need 2 for this particular piece, an angle brush, and again, whatever size you have on hand will work. All this is going to do is change how big or small your flowers are going to be. And then let's pull out a small round brush to use for the stems of the flowers. This is a number 3 round. And just as a quick side note, this brush set will be back in stock in just a month or two, just in time for the Christmas season. So I'll leave my product page link in the description of this video, along with links and information for any of the other products you see me using today, that you can sign up to be notified as soon as these brush sets are available again if you're interested. Now, I'm just taping my paper down really quickly with some artist tape. This is optional, but it can help with some warping of the paper, and I often do it just so I don't accidentally turn or move my paper out of the screenshot. All right, now the angle brush is actually going to be the key brush to create these flowers with today. If you've watched many of my tutorials, then you know I love using the angle brush. It can create some of the best one-stroke leaves and petals, and usually they are more on the quick and easy side to do. I'll go ahead now and just pull some paint out onto my tray and we can get started. The good news is that you can paint these flowers using any color you want or any combination of colors that you like. I think I will start with some pink first. I'll use some Quinacridone rose maybe. Now I do want to have some paint color that is more watered down and on the lighter value. So here is some pink that is more water to paint in ratio. And then I will also have a darker, more concentrated color that is more paint than water. In fact, to darken this up just a little bit more, I might even add a touch of alizarin crimson in here as well. Now, one of the keys to making this flower technique work today is loading your brush correctly to get a good gradient of value and color in your petals. I like to have a light watered down color as the base color in the bristles. In fact, you could even just use tainted water from the brush wash bowl. It's going to be that light. And then you swipe the longer tip of the brush bristles, maybe a quarter to half of the way, into the darker paint. It might take a bit of practice to get this right, but don't worry, even if the gradient doesn't come out prominent and perfect, we are still going to get some pretty looking flowers. All right, let's go ahead and load up the brush and give the first couple of petals a try. Now, I like to hold the angle brush for this stroke with the longer point facing downward. That way I can get the darker color more at the center part of the petals. Then I'll just push and almost pivot the bristles around, leading the stroke with the smaller end of the brush and then finishing the stroke back down at the bottom again. And if you need to or want to, you can even add a touch more of that darker color at the base of the petal if you feel like it needs it. I'll go ahead and paint another brush stroke similar to that, either close to or even just touching the first one. And with these 2 first petals, try to make them nice and large and rounded off in their size and shape. This is the base for the flower. You can see I had a little bit more of the darker color in the petal stroke than the first one, but that's okay. It's just going to add some variety and depth to the flowers. These petals and flowers are just supposed to be loose and fun, so don't worry about doing it right or wrong. Just go with the flow. Now, that is just the starting point for the flower. Now it's time to build around it. So let's try filling out the flower a little bit with a couple more petals off to the sides of these initial base ones. I'll paint these in a very similar way, but I will make these ones more thin in their size and shape rather than that large rounded size. All right, good. Let's continue building off of that. Go ahead and load the brush in the same way. And this time, let's paint some petals in what you might call the back row area or right up above the center base petals. And instead of making a small singular looking petal, this time we are just going to paint sort of a wavy ruffle line along that top edge from these middle petals. So you might be able to go around both petals all in one stroke if you've got enough paint in your brush, but I needed to reload. But so far, this is just a fun, loose, pretty looking flower. But at this point, we're just going to continue building around this until we get a nice fluffy looking flower. So let's add some more petals at the base of the flower, or maybe even one or two more off to the sides, just whatever. You have to be the judge of what your flower needs. Now, none of our flowers are going to look exactly the same, and that is totally okay. I'm just the guide to show you the technique, but you are the artist and you can apply it however you like for your flowers. Now, I usually like to paint with some sort of penciled in guide or outline. I feel like I personally don't do as well just freehand painting, but because I'm just keeping things loose and fun today, I'm giving my free-handed painting a try. But at this point, I'm really just going to continue painting in some more of these flower heads. I don't exactly have a particular flower in mind as to what these are, but they do kind of resemble maybe a peony or even a rose. You can go ahead and use the same color for all of the flowers, or you can change up your colors a bit. I went back and forth with what I wanted to do, but in the end, I decided to change them up. So for the next flower, I pulled out some yellow. I started with azo yellow, but then got worried maybe it was too light and too hard to see. So I added in some Gamboge to darken it up just a little bit. And because this color is already so light in value, I'm not even going to make a lighter watered down version of it. I think I can just rinse my brush off and use any leftover watered down paint that's already in the bristles for the base color. Then I can swipe the tip through the color on my tray. I started this flower out in the same way as the first one with those two center petals, but I was curious to see what would happen if I painted that back surrounding row of flowers in next before the side or base petals. I think the biggest difference this makes is that the color will bleed or blur a little bit more this time because the center petals are still a little bit wet as I'm adding that in. It might be a good idea to try out both ways, see which way you like better. This flower just seems to be a little bit more soft and blended, where the pink one is more crisp and distinct. So you can choose whichever order you want to paint the petals in best, whether you'd like it more soft and blurred or more prominent. All right, maybe I'll change up the colors once again for the next flower and add just a touch of alizarin crimson into the Gamboge to create sort of a soft orangey peach color. I might also try painting these center petals a little bit larger and maybe even a little more separate on this one just to make it a little bit different than the other two. But at this point, I'll just continue painting in these flower heads until I feel like I have enough on my page to create a good composition. The good news is that we can always add more in later if we need to. I hope you're enjoying this little watercolor tutorial so far. With all of the sadness, unrest, and chaos in the world, it's kind of nice to just sit and paint for a little while. It just takes our mind off of all of that for a short time, and we can be in our own happy little bubble. I find it to be very therapeutic, and I hope it helps you too. If you find you are enjoying my painting and teaching style, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you won't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. In fact, to give you a bit of a sneak peek into the future, I am starting to think about and plan some Christmas tutorials that I think you are really going to like, so make sure you don't miss out on those. All right, great job. Aren't these just pretty and fun to paint? I thought about adding a couple more flowers onto the page, but then I decided to try maybe painting in some little buds instead. So if you'd like to give this a try, then go ahead and load your brush once again in the same way as we've been doing. Hold the brush in the same way as before, and this time we are just going to make one stroke of the brush in sort of a curved or even a letter C shape for half of the bud. Maybe on this one down here, I'll even add a smaller petal off to the side just so it looks like it's just getting ready to open. Now I'll come back in here and add in the other half of the bud to round it off. Now I went through this kind of fast, but I do have a more slower paced step-by-step tutorial that can show you a little bit better how to paint this type of bud or flower with the angle brush if you need a little bit more instruction on that. I'll leave a link for it in the description of this video if you would find that helpful. But at this point, I think we can kind of be done painting in petals. So let's add in some accents to the page and finish this painting off. I'll just pull out the number 3 round brush now and maybe try adding in some subtle lines near the centers of the flowers that can sort of represent the stamen area. To start off with, I'll just use a darker version of the flower color, but in a little bit, we will add some brown or black to them to make it pop a little bit more. This is just a good general base color. All right, let's let that dry a little bit, but while we wait, we can go ahead and start painting in some of the stems and greenery. I'll start with some really light green colors first, and then we can work our way to the darker greens. I think I'll try some watered down olive green. This is really pretty and light in value, so it's just going to be a very subtle background accent. Maybe I'll paint in a stem line or a grass blade to get started. I'm wondering how a few more broad leaves would look if I added them in here as well. So let's pull out that angle brush again and give that a try. These are pretty simple to do. I hold the brush in the same way as before and then just simply pull out on the brush, starting the stroke with the thin side of the bristles and then turning the brush to the more broad and thick side and back again. And that is all there is to painting in these leaves. I might add a few more around the page here and there, but again, I'm starting these off pretty light just for some subtle background greenery. Okay, I'll go ahead and add some more olive green pigment to my tray so that we can now start painting in some darker stem lines. That looks pretty good. Now, you can continue on with that same green color, or you can change things up. I'm going to try just mixing a little bit of hooker's green in this time, though. Now to finish off the greenery, I'll switch back over to the angle brush and paint in some darker leaves here and there. And of course, use your artistic eye as you go and see if there's anything else you need to add to your piece to finish it off. All right, great job. For the very last thing, let's pull out the number 3 round again, along with some burnt umber, and paint in just a few more stamen lines in the centers of the open flowers. This is just going to create a little bit more depth, and the darker color creates a contrast that helps the flowers pop a little bit more. And that, my friends, is it for this fun little loose flower painting today. It might take a little bit of practice to get the hang of, but it is definitely worth it because not only is this super fun and quick to do, but these are also super pretty flowers. I think they would make some terrific little greeting cards as well, so I hope you'll take a few minutes out of your busy day and give it a try. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.